timber soared up out of his hand. The two men stood up and stared. The ball seemed as big as a cask. "Caught!" cried the man from prison, as a tree blotted out the thrower. The train looked on these things only for the fraction of a minute, and then passed behind trees into the Chislehurst tunnel. "My God!" said the man from prison again, as the darkness closed about them. "Why, that chap was as high as a house!" "That's them young cossers," said his brother, jerking his head elusively. "What's all this trouble about?" They emerged again to discover more siren-surmounted towers, more red huts, and then the clustering villas of the outer suburbs. The art of bill-sticking had lost nothing in the interval, and from countless tall hoardings, from house ends, from palings, and 100 such points of vantage came the polychromatic appeals of the great Boom-food election. "Caterham," "Boom-food," and "Jack the Giant Killer," again and again and again, and monstrous caricatures and distortions. 100 varieties of misrepresentations of those great and shining figures they had passed so nearly only a few minutes before. 2. It had been the purpose of the younger brother to do a very magnificent thing, to celebrate this return to life by a dinner at some restaurant of indisputable quality, a dinner that should be followed by all that glittering succession of impressions the music halls of those days were so capable of giving. It was a worthy plan to wipe off the more superficial stains of the prison house by this display of free indulgence. But so far as the second item went, the plan was changed. The dinner stood, but there was a desire already more powerful than the appetite for shows, already more efficient in turning the man's mind away from his grim prepossession with his past than any theatre could be, and that was an enormous curiosity and perplexity about this boom-food and these boom-children, this new portentous giantry that seemed to dominate the world. "I haven't the hang of them," he said. "They disturb me." His brother had that fitness of mind that even has set aside a contemplated hospitality. "It's your evening, dear old boy," he said. "We'll try to get into the mass meeting at the People's Palace." And at last the man from prison had the luck to find himself wedged into a packed multitude, and staring from afar at a little brightly lit platform under an organ and a gallery. The organist had been playing something that set boots tramping as the people swarmed in, but that was over now. Hardly had the man from prison settled into place and done his quarrel with an importunate stranger who elbowed before Caterham came. He walked out of a shadow towards the middle of the platform, the most insignificant little pygmy, away there in the distance, a little black figure with a pink dab for a face. In profile one saw his quite distinctive aquiline nose, a little figure that trailed after it most inexplicably a cheer. A cheer it was that began away there, and grew and spread, a little spluttering of voices about the platform at first, that suddenly leapt up into a flame of sound and swept athwart the whole mass of humanity within the building and without. How they cheered! Hooray! Hooray! No one in all those myriads cheered like the man from prison. The tears poured down his face, and he only stopped cheering at last because the thing had choked him. He must have been in prison as long as he before he could understand, or even begin to understand, what it means to a man to let his lungs go in a crowd. For all that he did not even pretend to himself that he knew what all this emotion was about. Hooray! Oh God! Hoo-ray! And then a sort of silence. Caterham had subsided to a conspicuous patience, and subordinate and inaudible persons were saying and doing formal and insignificant things. It was like hearing voices through the noise of leaves in spring. Wow, 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 wow. What did it matter? People in the audience talked to one another. Wow, 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 wow. The thing went on. Would that grey-headed duffer never have done? Interrupting? Of course they were interrupting. Wow, 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 wow. But shall we hear Caterham any better? Meanwhile, at any rate, there was Caterham to stare at, and one could stand and study the distant prospect of the great man's features. He was easy to draw, was this man, and already the world had him to study at leisure on lamp chimneys and children's plates, on anti-boom food medals and anti-boom food flags, on the selvages of Caterham silks and cottons, and in the linings of good old English Caterham hats. He pervades all the character of that time. One sees him as a sailor standing to an old-fashioned gun, a port-fired labelled "New Boom Food Laws" in his hand, and while in the sea wallows that huge, ugly, threatening monster, Boom Food, or he is cap a pie in armour, St. George's Cross and shield and helm, and a cowardly Titanic Caliban sitting amidst desecrations at the mouth of a horrid cave declines his gauntlet of the new Boom Food regulations, or he comes flying down as Perseus and rescues a chained and beautiful Andromeda, labelled distinctly about her belt as Civilization, from a wallowing waste of sea monster bearing upon its various necks and claws irreligion, trampling egotism, mechanism, monstrosity, and the like. But it was as Jack the Giant Killer that the popular imagination considered Caterham most correctly cast, and it was in the vein of as Jack the Giant Killer posted at the man from prison enlarged that distant miniature. The wah-wah-wah-wah came abruptly to an end. "He's done! He's sitting down! Yes! No! Yes! It's Caterham! Caterham! Caterham!" And then came the cheers. It takes a multitude to make such a stillness as followed that disorder of cheering. A man alone in a wilderness. It's stillness of a sort, no doubt, but he hears himself breathe, he hears himself move, he hears all sorts of things. Here the voice of Caterham was the one single thing heard, a thing very bright and clear, like a little light burning in a black velvet recess. Here, indeed, one heard him as though he spoke at one's elbow. It was stupendously effective to the man from prison, that gesticulating little figure in a halo of light, in a halo of rich and swaying sounds. Behind it, partially effaced as it were, sat its supporters on the platform, and in the foreground was a wide perspective of innumerable backs and profiles, a vast multitudinous attention. That little figure seemed to have absorbed the substance from them all. Caterham spoke out of our ancient institutions. "Ear, ear, ear!" roared the crowd. "Ear, ear!" said the man from prison. He spoke of our ancient spirit of order and justice. "Ear, ear, ear!" roared the crowd. "Ear, ear!" cried the man from prison, deeply moved. He spoke of the wisdom of our forefathers, of the slow growth of venerable institutions, of moral and social traditions that fitted our English national characteristics as the skin fits the hand. "Ear, ear!" groaned the man from prison, with tears of excitement on his cheeks. And now all these things were to go into the melting pot. Yes, into the melting pot, because 3 men in London 20 years ago had seen fit to mix something indescribable in a bottle, all the order and sanctity of things. Cries of "No, no!" Well, if it was not to be so, they must exert themselves, they must say good-bye to hesitation. Here there came a gust of cheering. They must say good-bye to hesitation and half measures. "We have heard, gentlemen," said Caterham, "of nettles that become giant nettles. At first they are no more than other nettles, little plants that a firm hand may grasp and wrench away. But if you leave them, they grow with such a power of poisonous expansion, that at last you must needs have axe and rope. You must have danger to life and limb. You must needs have toil and distress. Men may be killed in their felling. Men may be killed in their felling." There came a stir and interruption, and then the man from prison heard Caterham's voice again, ringing clear and strong. "Learn about boom food from boom food itself, and," he paused, "grasp your nettle before it is too late." He stopped and stood wiping his lips. "A crystal!" cried someone, "a crystal!" And then came that same strange swift growth to thunderous tumult, until the whole world seemed cheering. The man from prison came out of the hall at last, marvellously stirred, and with that in his face that marks those who have seen a vision. He knew, every one knew, his ideas were no longer vague. He had come back to a world in crisis, to the immediate decision of a stupendous issue. He must play his part in the great conflict like a man, like a free, responsible man. The antagonism presented itself as a picture. On the one hand those easy, gigantic, mail-clad figures of the morning; one saw them now in a different light. On the other this little black-clad gesticulating creature under the limelight, that pygmy thing with its ordered flow of melodious persuasion, its little, marvellously penetrating voice, John Caterham, Jack the Giant Killer. They must all unite to grasp the nettle before it was too late. 3. The tallest and strongest and most regarded of all the children of the food were the 3 sons of Cossor. The mile or so of land near Seven Oaks in which their boyhood passed became so trenched, so dug out and twisted about, so covered with sheds and huge working models and all the play of their developing powers, it was like no other place on earth. And long since it had become too little for the things they sought to do. The eldest son was a mighty schemer of wheeled engines. He made himself a sort of giant bicycle that no road in the world had room for, no bridge could bear. There it stood, a great thing of wheels and engines, capable of 250 miles an hour, useless save that now and then he would mount it and fling himself backwards and forwards across that cumbered work-yard. He had meant to go around the little world with it. He had made it with that intention, while he was still no more than a dreaming boy. Now its spokes were rusted deep red like wounds, wherever the enamel had been chipped away. "You must make a road for it, sonny," Cossor had said, "before you can do that." So one morning about dawn the young giant and his brothers had set out to work to make a road about the world. They seemed to have had an inkling of opposition impending, and they had worked with remarkable vigour. The world had discovered them soon enough, driving that road as straight as a flight of a bullet towards the English Channel, already some miles of it levelled and made and stamped hard. They had been stopped before midday by a vast crowd of excited people, owners of land, land agents, local authorities, lawyers, policemen, soldiers even. "We're making a road," the biggest boy had explained. "Make a road by all means," said the leading lawyer on the ground, "but please respect the rights of other people. You've already infringed the private rights of 27